are 1-2. 69% of the fan base is done. They want to jump off the bridge. What?
Oh, Adrian's in a pause of a stressful freak out right here. I think this is a pretty telling type of moment here, Skullman.
Around my name. So the underdogs this Thursday. You know what this means? All of these factors going into this one conglomeration. This is called the underdog effect. Brendan Albert is here, as is Mike Skulski. I'm Adrian Fetchu. I just yelled. I got passionate. I got into it. The underdogs, they're going to be barking on Thursday. You better believe it.
We lost you for a second, but we got a great freeze frame. We got a great freeze frame showing the passion behind everything you were going to say, I'm sure. But yeah, I mean, very frustrating loss. And the issue is the biggest problem from last week, the biggest opponent of the Eagles last week is going to be the biggest challenge this week, and that is themselves. They're getting in their own way. They're their biggest enemy right now. So if they can't overcome themselves, it's going to be a long season. But the good news is it's early on, and I'm still optimistic, especially with we're getting some key guys back this week.
Brendan, thoughts on the Eagles through 3 games?
Patience. I mean, that's kind of my thoughts so far, right? I'm not hitting the panic button by any means. I mean, look, the biggest reason that you're not blowing teams out that frankly the Eagles should be is just because they're starting slow. You know, I mean, obviously the Washington game, slow start. Falcons game, slow start. Lions game, slow start. I mean, you take Nelson Aguilar catch, this team could be, very different. I mean, Nelson Aguilar's catch against Atlanta, JJ catches that ball versus Detroit. We're talking about a 3-0 team. So to me, guys, I'm not hitting the panic button necessarily here. The only reason I am even a smidget of concern, and if you ask me like on a 1 to 10 scale, I'd probably give it like a 3, maybe a 4 on the panic scale. The only reason I have the panic is because teams like Atlanta, teams like Detroit, and now potentially a team like the Packers, if you lose this one, those are 3 teams we could be looking at tie-break scenarios down the line for a wild card situation, fellas.
Oh, absolutely. And you talk about the slow starts, and what was actually encouraging last week was the fact that the offense scored 10 points in their first 2 possessions. So all year long, they hadn't scored points in the first quarter. They were dead last in the first quarter scoring last year. But what happened? They still got off to a slow start because the special teams allows a touchdown, the special teams unit. The defense allows Matt Stafford to go right down the field. And then after that happens, the Eagles offense, they actually crossed the midfield stripe 3 times in a row. And they turned the ball over all 3 times in the second quarter. So that allows Detroit to get 6 more points on the board. They're up 20-10 at the break. And there you go again. Eagles are down at halftime.
Not to mention, right after one of our early scores, the first thing we do is we kick it short to an all-pro return man. He takes it right back to the house. All that momentum we just got, finally getting points on board, gave it right back to them almost immediately. I mean, Jake Elliott's, when you got a returner as talented as Agnew, you got to kick it in the end zone. You got to get that touchback. You cannot give him a chance to return it. And, we put the ball in their playmakers' hands, and you saw what happened.
And let's also give the Lions credit here, fellas. I don't think any of us would have said this is a team that we would have put money down to say was going to win the division, but this has been a really performing, successful team so far. They had a pretty aggressive offseason. Offensively, there's never been a doubt that this team can score points offensively since, Matt Stafford got there. They've always had a decent amount of weapons. So I get it. Like, we can always remember those 0-16 years of Detroit, but this team is not as bad as a lot of people want to make it out to be.
All right, well, let's talk about the Packers now. We'll get into some more Eagles things, but the Packers in general, they're 3-0. Are we buying them?
I'm coming on the fence. I mean, Aaron Rodgers has not looked like the Aaron Rodgers of old so far. I mean, they have that offensive. They have the new head coach who's from the offensive background, but still, something just doesn't seem right with them right now. I mean, it could be similar to the Eagles where they could find it, they could get it going. But I mean, outside of Devontae Adams, I'm not that impressed with their offense. Now, their defense has been a lot better than expected. They have a very young secondary, and they brought in some key free agent additions. So that is the biggest worry for me. Normally, when you think of the Packers, you think of a dynamic quarterback, high-scoring game. That's not what we're seeing this year. So it's kind of, it's an interesting year for Green Bay.
100% right, Skull, man. I mean, for all of our lives, it's always been the Green Bay offense, and then the defense. You just basically said like, "Hey, just cause turnovers, and then we can win the game." Even when they won their Super Bowl in the not so distant memory here, it was because the defense led the league at that time in takeaways. This defense, Skolsky, you nailed it though. A lot of youth here, and if you told me, if you asked me for the Packers, would you rather them have a slow start in offense to the season or a slow start in defense? Every single time, I would take a slow start in offense because I still know I have Aaron Rodgers. He's going to figure it out. I have that confidence in him. I'm not ready to, dig the hole in the ground and drop the casket in. Aaron Rodgers is still going to figure out. This is a top 15 defense, and they're doing very, very well despite having the youth. So if you're asking me for a team to buy stock in, man, Packers, this could be a really good team as we get later and later into the season.
The Packers were my pick to win the NFC North, but I don't think their 3-0 record indicates kind of how they're playing at the moment. I think they're playing more like 2-1-ish. But here's what I'll say about them. They actually made some moves during the offseason, and this is something that they never do. So I believe they have a new general manager now. They had Ted Thompson for the longest time. I'm pulling up right now. Brian Guten. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name. Gutenkust.
Nailed it. Sure.
Nailed it.
Gutenkust. That's his last name. Gutekunst. Brian Gutekunst. That's the last time I'm ever going to try to say it. But they made some moves during the offseason. The Smith brothers. Preston Smith. Zadarius Smith. Preston Smith right now is, I believe he's third or fourth in the league in sacks. He had 3 sacks last week. And then on the other side, Zadarius had 2 of them. So 5 total for the Packers defense there last week between those 2 outside linebackers. They signed Adrian Amos during the offseason, so that helps improve the safeties. They drafted Darnell Savage. You have Jair Alexander, who's, I think, a freaking stud in the making. He looks unbelievable. And that's somebody that the Eagles wanted last year, potentially in the first round, was him. Kenny Clark along the interior of the defensive line. So there's a lot of pieces there defensively, and they went about the offseason in a way that they never go about it. They actually signed some guys. So that's the point here with the Packers is like, no, the offense isn't really coming around. But you know what? That defense, it's legit.
And as Brandon said, I mean, the defense is legit, but the offense hasn't gotten it going just because they have that Hall of Fame caliber quarterback who's going to be in the Hall of Fame. That could turn the corner at any moment. Hopefully not this week for our sake, but I mean, as long as Aaron Rodgers is on the field, it's always going to be a threat to score the ball.
The big 3 defensive stats that matter, and when most people look at defenses, aside from obviously yards and points, right? They're currently 3rd in the league in sacks. They're currently 3rd in the league in interceptions, and they're currently tied in the league for forced fumbles. So this is a team who will get after the quarterback and can get the offense back on the field. Look, something's got to give here because the Eagles, they're going to put points up. I mean, that's just what's going to happen here. But something's got to give here Thursday night.
All right, so the area of weakness that Green Bay does possess, actually, they actually have an area of weakness. So right now, they are 25th in the NFL in yards per game allowed on the ground, also 4.9 yards per carry allowed. So this is what teams have done. Denver actually ran the ball last week in the first half, but they had to play from behind. They had to play catch-up. So second half, they kind of got away from them. But Dalvin Cook in week 2, they got up 21-0, but they still tried to run the ball, did Minnesota. I believe he had 151 yards. That's what Dalvin Cook had. So the Packers defense, from what I'm kind of seeing, they're really fast. They got a lot of team speed. But what you can do on them is a little misdirection, a little counterplay, and that's how you can get the defense to overflow, and that's how you hit them. So that's what I saw Dalvin Cook do on a couple of occasions, whether they were design cutbacks or just cutbacks that he made on his own. That's what I've been seeing against this Green Bay defense in terms of running the football on them.
I agree. I mean, if there's any week for the Eagles to get the running game going, this would be
it better be
fantastic week. And on top of that, we have a big addition coming back. Dallas Goedert is not going to be on a snap count anymore. I think we're going to see a lot more 12 personnel. I think we're going to see a lot more opportunities. I mean, when we are using like an extra lineman, it's kind of sailing that's going to be a pass. When we have Goddard there as a second tight end, we have, we can still throw it off. We can still throw the ball since he is that receiving threat. We need to see Miles Sanders hold the ball. the two biggest problems we see with a lot of young running backs are pass blocking and ball security. He's actually been pretty impressive at pass blocking, but ball security is one of his concerns coming out of college. Thankfully, both of those things are correctable with coaching. So I'm expecting that to be something that the coaches worked with him extensively. I don't think it's going to go away right away, but that is something that can be improved because I still think he's our most dynamic runner.
You nailed it, both of you guys, 100%. When you get a fast, athletic defense, don't worry about necessarily trying to match them speed for speed. Sometimes you just want to punch them right in the face and be physical in the trenches, and that's 100% what this game needs. Look, the Eagles' offensive line has always been good since Carson Wentz has been there, so that's not really a concern. I'm not terribly worried about the sack numbers, but Skolsky, you nailed it. You can't turn the ball over against Aaron Rodgers. No matter how poor the offense might look, it's still Aaron freaking Rodgers, right? I mean, they're still going to be able to make you pay. And yes, Miles Sanders, leaps and bounds, is the best athlete at the running back position. But you can't be a running back if you don't have the ball in your damn hands. So he's putting Jordan Howard in situations to get more snaps than, frankly, Jordan Howard probably deserves based on athleticism alone. But Jordan Howard, he's the tough guy. So I think we're going to see a healthy dose of Jordan Howard this week.
Miles Sanders averaging just 3.1 yards per carry at the moment, while Jordan Howard churning out 4 yards per tote. I don't know if you guys saw the Brian Baldinger film thing that he did on Jordan Howard. I actually wanted to comment on that because I meant to comment on that in my notebook show that I did. Now, you guys needed to see this, so I don't know if you guys actually saw this. But so he had like a cutback lane in the Brian Baldinger film, and like he didn't have the vision to see it. But I actually thought on this play that Kelsey got pushed all the way back and he wasn't able to make the cutback. So I actually disagreed with Baldinger's assessment, and I just wanted to make that known. Did you guys see this play?
I did see the play. It's really, to me, that's a tough thing. I mean, we can't really see what Jordan Howard saw, but from obviously when we slowed things down, we saw that big gaping hole that he could have cut through. I mean, it's a zone read. He just, bounced out the outside when we had that hole open up. So I saw it quickly at passing during my lunch break today, so I didn't get to do the full analysis.
This was the play that I was literally thinking about putting in because I saw the same thing Brian Baldinger did. But then when I slowed it down, watching it 2, 3, 4 times, I was like, oh, no, this is not what this is. Jason Kelsey got pushed all the way back. And he tried to make the cutback, but he couldn't because Kelsey's feet would have gotten in the way. He would have tripped over him. So that's why he went left on this play.
I think it's also important to know that, like, when you look at Jordan Howard, you look at Miles Sanders, they have two very different MOs. Jordan Howard's like, I'm getting north and south, and I'm going to drop my pads, and I'm going to ink everything out. Miles Sanders is a little more of the flash and the highlight. So, I totally get it, and I think Brian Baldinger is maybe one of the best follows, if not the best follow during football season. But I think it's also important to remember here, too, when we're looking at each of the backs, their MOs are very different here. Jordan Howard, he goes back to the huddle smiling if it's a gain of 2. I mean, that's his type of game. But if we're going to talk about Brian Baldinger, and I don't want to jump ahead, Adrian, there was another screen recording that Brian Baldinger got into on the defensive side of the ball that I think really grabbed everyone's attention.
I got to look at that one.
Are you talking about the big run?
Yeah, we're going to talk. Adrian, do you mind if I talk about the Eagles defense here?
Go do it right now. Sure, go for it. That's the next thing we can get into.
Well, all right. I hate to be the one to move the cart here, but I'm going to. Look, on that big reverse play, the Eagles had 10 defenders on the field.
I know.
Yep.
10 defenders on the field. Now, let me kind of highlight a couple of things that Baldy said, which was 100% true. First and foremost, Jim Schwartz has never played a 3-down front in Philadelphia, okay? Second off, so if that's not the biggest tip-off to you that something's not right, we only have 3-down defensive linemen. If you're the linebacker and you play in a stack situation on defense and you're not looking at the big backside of your defensive end and instead you're looking at the eyes of an offensive tackle, someone's missing in this situation. And then this was the most upsetting thing, and I said this to you guys on Twitter. The play before that was Miles Sanders' fumble. Not only was it the fumble, it was a booth review. So for 2 minutes, the defense is standing there on the sidelines looking at the Jumbotron thinking, boy, that's a fumble. I hope someone on defense can cause a fumble for us. It's supposed to be you. You are missing the play. For 2 minutes, you stood on the sidelines. Get in the game.
That goes back to what I said in the beginning of the video. The Eagles have to get out of their own way. There's so many self-inflicted gunshots. I mean, drops, fumbles, boneheaded plays. Week 1 we had that Sendejo doing God knows what on Vernon Davis. 10 men on the field after a big turnover. I mean, some of these things you would expect from like a veteran team, a team that's old as our team is. You don't expect that from a team like us. Someone that's had continuity with their defensive coaches. I mean, it's inexcusable.
Well, you know what else was inexcusable? Those 7 drops that we alluded to earlier. But you know what? Alshon Jeffrey's back. He's back, and he's going to play, and he's not going to be limited. So this is Doug Peterson from his press conference on Wednesday. He goes, yeah, I expect him to play. Obviously, with the limited full-speed practice reps this week, he took part in everything this week. He feels good, so I would expect him to go. It just gives our offense a lift from the standpoint that he's a veteran player, a guy that Carson Wentz knows, understands, and he's a good player. The thing that Doug Peterson didn't say, that I'm sure he was thinking about, Alshon Jeffrey's not going to drop the ball.
Most times. We saw a big drop last year.
I know, that's right. Got it, and it was like his only drop of the year.
It's like his only drop, but 9 times out of 10, I mean, that's what we want Arcega-Whiteside to turn into, but you could tell, I mean, that isn't what he did last game. I mean, hopefully that's just some, young guy jitters, but Alshon Jeffrey is that vet, 50-50 balls, he's going to come down with it. That's someone that Wentz has a, relationship with. He can throw that back shoulder throw and Alshon will go up and get it. He hasn't had that the last 2 weeks. He's had, inexperienced receivers. He's had hurt receivers. So for him just to even have a reliable target outside of Zach Ertz that he can throw to and trust, to be in the right place at the right time or to go up and get it, he has that target, and that's huge, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I echo everything you said there. I think you got to be realistic here. I think that's always the most important thing. When you're setting expectations, you always want to make sure what's realistic. What's realistic, first and foremost, Deshaun Jackson's not going to play 16 games, folks. So when we look at his type of situation, even in his first stint in Philadelphia, he was never going to be that guy. So D-Jax being out, obviously it's a bummer, but you kind of know what you're getting when you bring him in, right? And Nelson, unfortunately, it's also the inconsistency. I mean, he makes a big catch in Atlanta, but he also has a big drop in Atlanta. That's one of those things where, unfortunate as it is, I'm starting to get to the point where I'm just being like, this is who he is, folks. It's hard for me at this point in time, at this many years in, to suddenly think he's going to be a sure-handed receiver. I think he is what it is, and we just got to kind of accept the good with the bad with Nelson.
And I think that's why we didn't see Howie Roseman give him that extension. I think that's why we saw him let him play out this last year.
I agree.
Deal. I mean, he had the opportunity his last 2 weeks. He was the guy, and he showed up in the red zone. But like you said, he's still showing his inconsistencies. He's showing that he can be someone's slot receiver, but he's not someone you're going to be giving big money to or expecting big things from week in and week out. He's going to give you some weeks where he looks great and some weeks where he's going to disappear. So I guess he is what he is. But it's going to be nice, I guess, for him that Alshon will be there to take some pressure off him.
Yeah, and he had the drop and the fumble, and then there was a drop on a third down last week. So it's just the thing with him is I thought he was kind of past some of the mental things. I hope this doesn't snowball on him, but at least he kind of bounced back in the second half because these mistakes occurred in the first half. So there's that. Now the other thing, we kind of alluded to it earlier, and that's protecting Carson Wentz. We know what Green Bay can bring to the table in terms of the sacks and how they can get after the quarterback. If the Eagles protect Carson Wentz, if they're able to block Preston Smith and Zadarius Smith with Lane Johnson and Jason Peters, I honestly think they win the game. But the problem is the pass protection, like last year, like the year before, that first month, it just isn't there.
And I just saw not too long ago that Zadarius Smith is actually questionable for the game, so that would be a huge for the Eagles.
Wow.
If he does not play.
But
yeah, for whatever reason it is, we have a talented offensive line, but they always, I should say the Eagles in general, they always seem to start off slow out of the gate. And I don't know if that's coaching or what that is, but
it's like they're going to go 2-2 every year during the Doug Peterson tenure.
I mean, even our Super Bowl year, we were a 63-yard field goal from a rookie kicker away from being 1-2.
Yeah.
I mean,
honestly, I made that point in Sunday's video that I did, the Detroit video. I was like, this game was the Giants game again, but they couldn't pull it off this time.
We didn't have we didn't have that big field goal at the end, but it was almost
big field goal.
It was almost identical.
The block, but not the field goal.
It was almost identical. Yeah,
Yep.
you're absolutely correct. And if Jake Elliott doesn't make that big kick, we're looking at the same exact scenario. Probably people panicking right now as well.
Yeah.
But they need to show up right now because they protect Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz has been doing the best. I think he's been doing pretty damn well for running for his life and making plays and putting the offense on his back when he needs to. But if the offensive line can protect him, you saw what he did in 2017 when he had time to throw. He was putting up MVP level numbers, not just keeping the team in the game numbers.
And can we all agree on something here? Can we just agree that we want to sign a petition for Carson Wentz to stop sliding and diving headfirst? Unless it's a Sunday, the first Sunday of February, I don't see any situation where Carson needs to be diving headfirst. It scares the tar out of me. And I love the fact that he has this athletic ability to extend plays and to earn those extra yardage as a team and offensive line. They love it when quarterbacks are willing to fight. But let's also be smart here. We don't need to be diving headfirst. Adrian, going back to your offensive line kind of comment, I'm not terribly worried about it, although Skolsky brought up the rare situation where he talks about he's happy it's a Thursday night game where a questionable actually could turn into an out because it's a Thursday night situation. I'm not terribly worried, honestly, fellas, about the Eagles protecting Carson. It's actually the exact opposite of what I'm worried about here. When I talk about the defensive line, that's more of my concern for Philadelphia than the offensive line right now.
Well, we'll talk about the defensive line right now. So the DNs have yet to register a sack. The Eagles have 2 sacks on the year, which is ridiculous. It's absurd. The fact that this football team only has 2 sacks on the season. So when I'm watching the game last week, here's what I'm seeing. Matt Stafford has all day to throw. He can get through his first read. He can get through his second read. He can get through his third read. When you look at the other side of the equation, Carson Wentz basically only to get through 1 read. And then the wide receivers are all backups, and they're not creating separation. So that was the difference between what we saw from the Lions and then the Eagles.
Yeah, so here's what it comes down to. The Eagles are actually 3rd in the NFL right now in pass rush win rate. They have 2 guys in the top 10 in pass rush win rate. Excuse me, I can't talk. But we have 0 defensive end sacks. We have Brandon Graham and Derek Barnett both in the top 10, but both of them have a goose egg in sacks.
They're a bunch of BGs. Of BGs on this team.
Fletcher Cox, coming off an injury, you can tell he's not fully himself yet. I think he'll get it together by the end of the year, but these last few games, he hasn't been getting hardly any penetration. I haven't seen Adrian scream his catchphrase at all this year. And when he is getting that penetration, that opens up things for the rest of that defensive line. We also, when we did our preview show, we talked about things we like to see. We have not seen any of these young rotational defensive ends step up. I need to see more from Josh Sweat. Vinny Curry, it's been pretty silent. The only person on our defensive line who has a sack is Tim Jernigan, and he's out for probably the next month.
Oh, Timmy Jernigan, you mean?
Yeah. So I mean, this is they need to get together. They can't just be. It's nice that they're getting pressure, but those pressures need to turn to sacks, or at least
100%. Yeah, 100%. I'm kind of conflicted, to be completely transparent with you here, because when Adrian gives his Fletcher Cox, statement,
deep.
There it is. Half of me is excited because obviously it means he did something really well, but the other half of me is I feel like my ears were just violated, So it's I have kind of this conflicting, personal thought. But you guys are right. We're not seeing the pressure here from the defensive line, and that's a concern. My biggest concern I have, though, fellas, is if I look at the defense, I think the 2 biggest concerns that most folks would have, and even the people in the chat, some people have talked about it here, is the defensive backs and the defensive line. Well, here's the difference. The defensive backs, you have some guys who can come back and get healthy. And I can tell you several guys that I think potentially could be traded from teams that are defensive backs. I can't tell you many guys that are defensive ends that potentially could be traded for the Eagles. So help is not necessarily either on the injury report, and I don't necessarily see help on the trading block either. That's why, to me, this is the biggest area for the Philadelphia Eagles that I am largely concerned with.
Yeah, so Eagles, they like to rush with 4, drop back 7, and if you don't get the pressure with the front 4, you got to manufacture the pressure, which is kind of not what you want to do with Aaron Rodgers. But so what I've been seeing, teams are chipping with running backs, chipping with the tight ends. This is something I've seen before with the Eagles. I mean, this is what offensive coordinators have done before. So it's not like this is anything new, but this is something that they talked about during the press conference with Jim Schwartz. He's talking about how there's a lot of max protect and all this stuff. I mean, this isn't something that they haven't seen before, but just kind of making a point you say about the pressure rate, and they're top 10, but they only have 2 sacks in the year.
But let's give them some credit, though. Their run defense has been outstanding. They completely shut down Kerryon Johnson. They shut down Devontae Freeman. I mean, Darius Geis had, under 2 yards a carry. Even looking back last week, we had a special teams touchdowns, and most of their points came off turnovers. But they've been doing that classic bend but don't break defense lately. Mm-hmm. But against Aaron Rodgers, we got to get pressure. Not getting sacks, we can get by a few games, but long term, these almost sacks are only going to do so much.
100% right, Skolsky. And we're talking about maybe the greatest ever as far as extending plays there in Aaron Rodgers. And I don't care how good your back seven is. If you're not getting pressure with the front four and your defensive coordinator, who traditionally isn't a blitz happy guy, he likes to just try to get after it before, Aaron Rodgers is going to keep extending plays. And that's going to put your defensive backs, no matter how good they are, in a really bad situation. So what's going to naturally happen is we as fans throw our hands up and say, well, how the hell did they get open? And the response is, well, they have to cover for 6 seconds because the defensive line's not getting there, and you're not blitzing because that's not what Jim Schwartz does. So I'm just really curious to see, does Jim Schwartz change his defensive philosophy and start blitzing? I wouldn't be hopeful on that. But at the same time, I also know if my defensive ends aren't getting any sacks after 4 weeks in the season, probably time to change something.
And they're trying to blitz. That's what they're doing, a lot of it, a lot more than Jim Schwartz is accustomed to. And let's talk about the cornerbacks now, because there's an injury that the Eagles are dealing with. Ronald Darby has a hamstring injury. He's going to be out for at least a couple weeks, probably a month or so. So this actually might be a blessing in disguise, because I don't think he's looked good at all coming off that ACL tear. Teams are just going after and peppering him with targets. He's ranked 101st out of 110 in terms of the PFF rankings. Take that, whatever you want. But it hasn't looked good for him. So now he's out. And when he went out the last game, it looked like the cornerbacks actually played better.
2 of the guys I said who needed to step up big this season were Derek Barnett and Sidney Jones. When we drafted Sidney Jones, we talked about him being a top 15 talent. And Achilles injury, that takes a while to recover, but now he's fully healthy. Now he has that starting job. It's going to be a big week for him. So, it also, to be fair, it's kind of what Bert was just talking about, where if our defensive line is getting pressure, we're giving Aaron Rodgers 6-7 seconds to throw. It doesn't matter. We have Jalen Ramsey out there. And when you have Devontae Adams, he's only going to be covered for so long. You can't cover him for 6-7 seconds. So it's going to be a big week for – I know the team's been very happy with Rasul Douglas' look this offseason as well. So, it's 2 great opportunities for both those guys.
Yeah, 100% right. Look, Thursday nighters typically favor the defense over the offense. You have a couple less days for install, so traditionally you don't see a lot of points. I think the highest Thursday night game has been like 26 points by a team this year, and I think it was the Jags, if I remember correctly. So this is not exactly a great recipe if you're an offensive coordinator. Traditionally, it favors the defense more, and I hear you. I buy what you're selling there, Adrian, and Darby hasn't looked like a rock-solid stud. If we wanted any further clarifications, the fact that he only got a 1-year deal and it was re-signing with the Eagles probably should have told all of us in the offseason, this guy's not a surefire stud corner. But here's my thing, and Adrian, I buy it, and you're right. NFL teams have picked on him. But here's what I always say. If he sucks, and you're the 3rd-string corner, that means you really suck. Because no matter how you want to frame it, if he's starting above you, someone, whether it's right or wrong, that's obviously up for everyone's debate, but someone believes that there's a reason that you're 3rd string. So I hear everything you're saying there, Adrian. I would always rather have my whole team healthy, and then if you stink, then you can bench them on purpose opposed to health reasons. But I'm not necessarily super confident that we're going to see help from at least the internal roster right now of the Philadelphia Eagles in the defensive backs room unless a trade happens.
Well, what I will say, they almost have like 3 starters on the outside because they're rotating Sidney Jones and Rasul Douglas. So you kind of have 2A and 2B. So there's no 3 in some ways. I thought that was interesting that the Eagles did that because heading into week one, they were like, yes, Sidney Jones is going to be the starter. And I was like, I thought Rasul Douglas looked better. But then when you look at the snap counts, I think Douglas was actually seeing more playing time. So they're divvying it up.
Avonte Maddox has been in that rotation as well. But
Big time.
Yeah, I love him in the slot.
And this isn't a cornerback, but I think it should help, our coverage against tight ends. We have a big person coming back, Kamu Grugier-Hill.
Good shit. I meant to bring his name up. Good
Way
stuff.
to nail it, too, in the pronunciation skill, man.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. So, I mean, I'm not sure. I know I saw Jimmy Graham was questionable. I didn't get to read up on whether or not he's expected to play, but he's our best cover corner. I mean, I'm drawing a blank on his name, the linebacker from the Redskins.
Zach Brown.
Zach Brown, excuse me. Yeah, but he's more of a run. I mean, obviously he's been doing great at run defense, but Grugier-Hill has been one of our better pass coverage linebackers. So to get him back, I think that will help quite a bit. And the team, I know a lot of people were saying he's been one of the more impressive guys in training camp on defense. So he's also one of our captains on special teams. So I think that's a big name to get back for us. Obviously, it's not going to help against guys like Devontae Adams or any of the outside receivers, but I think having him in there is going to help our pass defense in the middle of the field.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Mercedes Lewis there, still a tight end, rotation guy at this point in time in his career. Same thing with Jimmy Graham. I think we all would agree he's a rotation guy. He's not Jimmy Graham from several years ago here. But you're right. I mean, if you're able to at least be controlling between the hashes or between the numbers and now you essentially say, hey, can we just spot Shadow Adams a little more? You know what? If you're going to make all of the other receivers in Green Bay beat you, so be it. You don't want Adams to beat you, truthfully. This is a tough one, though, because, again, my biggest concern, and I want to restate it because I think it's that important, is you can't let Aaron Rodgers overextend plays. You could be a really poor receiver, but if you just keep getting more and more time to get open, it's only going to help you. So that's still the biggest concern I have for this week, fellas.
All right, one last thing to get into here on the Packers front. So they're running the ball more often than they have in the past. So that was something that, they always got on Mike McCarthy about. Why isn't Aaron Jones getting enough carries? That was the thing that they've been talking about the last couple of years. So they're running it 44% of the time. That's the 10th best run percentage in the NFL. So like kind of Tennessee likes to run the ball. Same kind of deal with Matt LaFleur, bringing that kind of here to Green Bay. So Jones ran for 116 yards in week 2, but he's actually totaled just 58 in the other 2 games. And the Eagles are stuffing the run. So they like to run the ball and do the deep play action. Well, if they don't run the ball, that might hurt the deep play action. So the thing I'm going to say is this. The Eagles do better against the teams that kind of run first. They obviously stuff the run. So if they kind of run first and try to pass later, this isn't the way to go against Philly. It's usually the way to go is Aaron Rodgers just kind of flings it around the park and does whatever he wants to do. We'll see if that's going to be the recipe or not.
I agree completely. We were kind of talking about that a little bit earlier about how the Eagles' run defense has been fantastic. I think like you said, stopping Aaron Jones will be quite. I mean, that will give our safeties the opportunity, to help out our corners more, which will help our secondary. So, I mean, making any offense one-dimensional is just it's a huge help for the defense. So we can make the Packers one-dimensional. Even if that one dimension's Aaron Rodgers, it's still better than having to deal with Aaron Rodgers and the dynamic running game.
Yeah, I mean, isn't this the definition of a careful what you wish for?
Yeah.
Yes.
type of statement, right? I mean, let's also kind of talk about who the Packs play, because I think that's a pretty good indication. They've played Minnesota, they've played the Bears, they've also
all good defenses.
Yeah, all good defenses here. All good defenses, too, against the run. So it's not like they've played the Dolphins 3 times in a row, okay? So this is a team who I think it's fair to say they are committed to the run game, because if you have shown you're committed to the run game against 3 defenses that rank in the top 13 as far as yards per game, this is who you're going to be no matter who you play. So I don't think Green Bay is going to come out there and pucker up and be nervous about running the ball in Philadelphia. I think they're going to continue to do it. It's just going to be interesting to see how long does it happen before either Aaron Rodgers starts hitting some shots or Aaron Rodgers has a meltdown and says, forget the run, we're starting to throw the ball.
All right, prediction time. This time of the show. I don't even know if I still have a prediction yet, but what are you guys thinking?
I've been bouncing back and forth.
I've been bounced. Yeah, I've been going side to side like Ariana Grande. I don't know what.
It's gonna come down to a couple of things. The Eagles have to get out of their own way.
Yep.
They have to get pressure on Aaron Rodgers, and they have to win the turnover battle. We cannot be in the negative in the turnover battle, or else we're going to lose this game. It's tough enough to beat Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. If we give him the ball back, it's going to be near impossible. Doug Peterson's also undefeated on Thursday night games. I think with our back against the wall, that I just don't see us, going 1-3. I mean, I hope not, but I just think, getting Alshon back in, got her at 100%. I'm leaning towards us to win in a low-scoring game, so I want to go maybe 23-20 Eagles.
Oh, wow, that was my prediction in my preview. Good stuff. Right on it, baby. Go ahead,
This
Albert.
is tough. This is a tough one for me, fellas. So the Vegas line is 4 when I saw it from Caesars. And as I always say, there's a reason these hotels out here are so tall, and it's not because Vegas is dumb when it comes to setting
It opened
line.
at 3, which really surprised me.
That one surprised me too.
They like the Eagles.
And this is one of those things where it's like, again, something's got to give. You put the rosters down on paper offensively. I mean, look, if you wanted to pick Rodgers over Carson Wentz, I'm not going to argue with you. I think that one's fair. But the rest of the roster, you're probably picking all Eagles besides Devontae Adams. So offensively here, Philadelphia absolutely is the favor. Defensively, though, boy, Green Bay's look really good. They really have defensively. Now, as I say that, I also want to make sure I'm being fair. They've played Joe Flacco, and they've played Mitchell Trubisky, who can't turn left like Zoolander. Okay, that's 2 of the 3 games they played. Oh, and the third one was Kirk Cousins. So let's not exactly say like they're out there playing, Hall of Famers. So this is tough. Traditionally speaking, Thursday nights favor the defense, and I actually think the Green Bay has a much better defense at this point in time than the Eagles. So my traditional thinking tells me, well, then pick the Packers. I just don't see it, though. I just don't see a way that this team loses back-to-back games, even though it's on a Thursday night. I don't see the Eagles losing this one. I'm going to go a little bit higher scoring, but I'm not going to go crazy. I think 31-27 Eagles, I think, is the pick. But if they lose this one, fellas, I wouldn't be terribly surprised either.
Okay. All right. Well, I would say that most of the country is probably going to say the Packers are going to win. Brendan is not an Eagles fan, by the way.
Nope.
So he's unbiased here. And how about those Ravens and Lamar Jackson, bro? How about Lamar?
Right.
How about Lamar? Dude, he shocked me.
Brendan was not a fan of the Lamar pick.
I wasn't either, but he is shocking me. And, oh, my God, dude, I think you hated that pick more than anybody.
I did. The only pick I hated more was the year prior when they selected Marlon Humphrey, who's also looked awesome because I really wanted Calvin Ridley or O.J. Howard, who were on the board. But I still am cautiously optimistic, fellas, because they have played the Dolphins as one of those weeks. And you know what? If you take away the fourth quarter against Kansas City, he didn't look great. And even in that Kansas City game, there were 2 Hail Mary plays that he got bailed out of. I'm not ready to, crown Lamar as much as everyone is. If you asked me, would I rather Lamar or a draft pick? I think right now I would still take the draft pick. However, after we get about 5 games in, 6 games in, when he starts playing the Browns, starts playing the Steelers, a little more of the meat of the schedule and no longer the Miami Dolphins of the world, who if you ask a Dolphins fan, they might tell you they're actually 3-0 in their minds because of what they're trying to do. I'm not ready to say that Lamar is a surefire thing, but I am excited. But let's not get crazy here.
All right. So
excited after 3 games.
Ask you a quick question because this isn't an Eagles show. Are those mechanics going to be maintained? Because I've never seen him this accurate in my life.
No, I mean,
you have no faith. No faith in Lamar.
I am cautiously optimistic. I think that's the kind way of wording it to be completely transparent, fellas.
Bert, cautiously optimistic after 3 games where Giants fans already think they have the next Peyton Manning. I'll give him credit. That was a very impressive debut, but we gotta see it. Consistency.
Tampa Bay is one of the worst pass defenses.
I've seen Fitzpatrick look like an all-pro quarterback for 3-4 game stretches, but then look like a journeyman quarterback he is the rest of his career. So
There's no way that anyone beat David Gettleman into work on Monday, right? Like he was just coming into the office, just strolling around, acting like
Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor.
You couldn't tell him anything.
And let's assume he does turn into a competent quarterback. It kind of goes back to what we turned about on draft day, where was it an overdraft? Probably, but if he turns out to be a franchise quarterback, no one's going to bat an eye at it a few years later. So if you see someone you identify as your franchise QB, that's one position you reach on. So I'm not going to say he's a franchise QB yet, but he's obviously showing that he has some talent.
All right, final thoughts time. So we're at the end of the show here. Anything else you guys want to talk about?
Like I said, just we got to get out of our own way. And another thing that's worrying me more long term is our drafting. I mean, besides Carson Wentz, you go back to that year. I mean, I'm not going to judge this year's rookie class yet. I'm still high on Dillard, Arcega-Whiteside, and Miles Sanders. But there's not many people I look at in our draft rosters besides Wentz and say, that guy's an all-pro talent. Most of these guys we've been getting have been big free agents or trades. I mean, thank God Howie Roseman is creative in his trades and free agency as he is. A lot of the guys we get are either average starters or competent backups or not on the team at all. So I mean, I'm not gonna say anything bad about long-term careers of these young guys from this year's class, but you see young wide receivers, rookie wide receivers for other teams going off. Scary Terry, a lot of guys who would have been fantastic for us these first 2 weeks. I'm still very high on both of them, but with Wentz's mega deal coming up, we have to make sure we nail these draft picks. We can't just be getting average players. We need some stud players, and we need some diamonds that we're going to find in those middle rounds as well.
Well said, Skolsky. I mean, it's not fiscally reasonable to just keep buying off of trades and buying off of free agent. That's not realistic for any NFL team. You have to hit on draft picks, especially on day 2 and day 3. I'm not as worried, to be transparent, maybe as it sounds like you are, Skolsky, but I get where you're coming from with this. For me, my signing off note here, if you're an Eagles fan, you want to root so hard for any team who plays Arizona and any team who plays the Denver Broncos. Why? Because Chris Harris, I think, is a very realistic trade situation getting out of Denver. I think Pat P is a very realistic situation. I think Chandler Jones. And I'm just going to put this one out there and kind of throw the grenade and hide. Von Miller.
Ooh.
To throw the grenade.
I talked about this with Adrian before. Howie Roseman usually doesn't get the guy that's all in the news. He usually is calling around for those people. Most teams aren't thinking that are even available, like we did with Michael Bennett, like we did with Jay Ajayi. So I think he has something up his sleeve. I don't think it's going to be Jalen Ramsey, but one of those guys you named that a lot of people aren't thinking about being trade bait right now. It wouldn't shock me to see a big move before the trade deadline.
All right. So my final thought. I meant to say this earlier in the show, but I forgot. So I got a new sponsor. I got a sponsor on my Eagles segment. I'm actually pretty excited about this because I love potato chips. Hers Potato Chips,
Ooh.
The official sponsor for Adrian Fedku segments. Oh yeah, on Fox Phillies, The Gambler. So Hers Potato Chips. I love barbecue chips, and I think they have the best barbecue chips out there. Barbecue chips, salt and vinegar chips, sour cream and onion. You can't go wrong. So make hers yours, bitches. Do it.
Love it.
That's it. Burton TD, at Burton TD. Follow Brendan at Burton TD. Follow the podcast. You can follow him also at Brendan Albert. Follow Mike Skolsky at Mike Skolsky. So you guys had the ats on your names this time. Good job, gentlemen. Me, I just got my name. Adrian Fedku. And that's the end of this show. So we are out of here. Eagles are going to win this game. They better win this game, or else I'm jumping off the bridge and I'm joining the 69%. We're out.
Appreciate it.
See ya.